I'm going to tell you something that used to be really hard for me to admit, but I think it might change everything for you. So I'm going to share it. When I had my bariatric surgery, I honestly thought I was essentially getting a brain transplant too. I know that sounds ridiculous because I only signed off on the waiver for surgery on my stomach. But hear me out. I've lost and regained weight my entire adult life. I tried everything, every diet, every program, every approach. And when I finally decided on having bariatric surgery, one of the most extreme things that you could do to lose weight, I didn't want to just lose weight. I wanted to become a completely different person. I wanted to become someone who never struggled with food, someone who just ate normally, someone who didn't think about food constantly, who didn't use it for stress relief, who didn't have that mental tug of war every single day. And honestly, I didn't think much about my relationship with food before surgery. I didn't even really know what a relationship with food really was. I'd gone to see a food therapist, so I guess we talked about it then. But for the most part, I wasn't thinking about my relationship with food. I just thought to myself, if I have the surgery, all my problems will be solved and I'll be this new person who never struggled. For a while, it felt like that fantasy was real. I lost 140 pounds. I did everything right. Everything my doctor told me to do. Heck, I was even featured by my doctor in their monthly newsletter. I was doing that well. And for the first 10, 12 months, it was really, truly incredible. For the first time in my life, I didn't think about food. I had to set timers to remind myself to eat. And this was something I never experienced before in my entire life, ever. That would be wild if you told pre-surgery Jessica that. But here's what no one ever told me before surgery is that surgery doesn't change the part of you that eats when you're not hungry. When my father passed away, about a year after my surgery, that reality hit me like a freight train. If you're new here and you have no idea who I am, I'm Jessica Lawson. I'm a certified nutrition coach and bariatric coach, and I've helped over 150 bariatric women understand why their food noise came back after surgery. But before I was helping others, I was the woman who regained 15 pounds in 30 days after losing 140 pounds. I was the one standing in my pantry, eating when I wasn't hungry, knowing it wasn't going to help, but doing it anyway. What started as a personal crisis became the system that's now helped hundreds of women take back control after bariatric surgery. One of my clients, Christina, told me once, and you can watch that video right here. She told me, Jessica, you regaining weight was the best thing that ever happened to me. Wow. Who could have thought that? And the reason why she said that was because by myself regaining weight, I then created my process, my method, my steps, and was able to teach others. Got certified, became a certified nutrition coach, and was able to share my knowledge that no one teaches you. No surgeon, no doctor, no therapist, no nutritionist, really no other coach on the planet. So let me take you through exactly what happened, because this story might save you years of struggle that I went through. By watching this video, here's what you're going to understand. Why surgery creates expectations it can never fulfill. How I went down a shame spiral to complete food freedom. And the missing piece that actually works to quiet food noise permanently. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand that if you're struggling after surgery, you're not broken. You're just missing the operating system that should have come when you got out of the operating room. Let me be completely honest about what I expected from surgery. I honestly didn't think much about my relationship with food before surgery. I just thought, I'm going to have the surgery, take out part of my stomach, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight, and then everything will be different for the rest of my life. Capiche. That easy, right? I thought I'd have surgery and become a completely different person. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. I would be someone who never struggled, who was just normal around food, like the skinny people. That's what I thought. Can't believe I just said those words out loud. But yeah, at the time, those were the words that I used. You know, those people who could just take or leave food, who forget to eat lunch because they're busy, who stop eating when they're full without even thinking about it. That's who I thought I'd become. All my problems would be solved. The constant mental chatter about food, the emotional eating, the shame cycles. I thought surgery would just erase all of that along with the weight. And for the first 12 months, it felt like the fantasy was real. I lost 140 pounds and it seemed like I'd become that different person I always wanted. Those first few months were truly incredible. I didn't think about food. I had to set myself timers to remember to eat. Can you imagine me, someone who had lived my entire adult life? Honestly, my entire life. I remember being 5, 7, 13, dealing with food problems. Imagine spending your entire life obsessing about food and then having to be reminded to eat. That was something I never experienced before in my life, and I didn't even think that could even be a problem that I would face after surgery. And the mental quiet around food was so surreal. I thought I was cured. I thought I was different now. I went from living to eat And I mean that literally. I was 300 pounds and food was the center of my universe. It's what I did for fun. It was my best friend. It's who I hung out with after work. I went from that to not thinking about food. I believed that this was my new normal. I thought, this is it. I'm finally one of those people who just eats normally. Surgery fixed me. And the confidence I had was incredible. I wasn't just smaller. I felt like I'd been freed from a prison that I'd lived in my whole life. But then my father passed away a year after my surgery, and the grief hit hard. And even though I knew better, even though I'd lost 140 pounds and was supposed to be fixed, found myself back in the pantry, back eating ice cream at night. Wasn't hungry, but I ate anyway. And I knew it wouldn't help, but I did it anyway. And it started with, I'd be on the phone with, Social Security or the funeral home, the crematorium, and I'd find myself grabbing the snacks, going through his paperwork, and there I was with a handful of nuts. And it escalated so quickly. In just 30 days, I regained 15 pounds, but the physical weight wasn't the worst part. It was the fear, the shame of spiraling. That voice in my head saying, see, you're just another statistic. You're part of the 76% of people who have surgery and regain weight after. I felt like I'd failed at the one thing that was supposed to save me. Here I was, someone who had succeeded with surgery. Heck, my doctor featured me in their email newsletter, but I was secretly falling apart. The confusion was overwhelming. I could feel that my restriction was still there. My stomach wasn't hungry, but my brain was screaming for food anyway, and I couldn't understand why. And then that's when I had the breakthrough that changed everything. I realized by doing the research, becoming certified as a certified nutrition coach, and really diving into the data, that surgery was never going to erase the food noise, the emotional eating, the binging, the grazing, all the very things that made me need surgery in the first place. Surgery just changed my stomach, but the real problem was me. It was my brain. The neural pathways that drove me to food for comfort, stress relief, and emotional regulation were completely unchanged. When grief hit, my brain did exactly what it has always done. I didn't try to just get back on track with another diet or meal plan. I went to war with the real problem. I became my own case study. I had to understand what was happening in my brain. So I dove into the science of food addiction, emotional regulation, metabolic adaptation, and habit formation, and so much more, all through the perspective of the bariatric lens, the bariatric physiology. And I say how trauma impacts the brain, how restriction fuels relapse, why so many people regain even though they know what to do. You know how to eat healthy. I spent months reading papers, trying to understand everything and the neuroscience. And I threw out the shame tactics and rigid plans, meal plans especially, that clearly weren't working. And instead I built a system that targeted the real drivers of regain, the emotional loops, the broken brain patterns, the chaotic inner world that we try to silence with food. This was not about willpower or discipline. This was about understanding how my brain actually worked and giving it what it needed to support my success instead of sabotaging it. So in 30 days, I lost every pound I regained with this new approach. But most importantly, the food noise faded, the craving stopped, and for the first time in my life, I trusted myself around food. I went from living to eat back to eating to live. But this time it wasn't because of surgery restriction. It was because my brain had actually changed. And I knew that this was the missing piece that thousands of bariatric patients across the globe needed. So this was not just about me anymore. Since launching the Bariatric Success Academy, I've helped over 150 bariatric patients take back control and stay in control using the same system. And the results speak for themselves. 98% of my clients stopped their regain within the first 20 to 30 days, and 90% report 70% less food noise within 2 weeks. But the most common thing they tell me is this: I finally feel like I'm the person that I always wanted to become, the person that I thought surgery was going to make me, not just smaller, but free. If you're watching this video right now, I need you to know that this journey was never about willpower. It's never about self-control. It was never about discipline. It was never about restriction. It's about tools, systems, and knowledge. It's about structure and a strategy built for you and your brain, not another diet, not something you found on the internet and just took from someone else and plugged. There's no shortage of advice out there. I see it every day. Bariatric patients love to scour the globe, the internet, for all kinds of information. But what they suck at? Execution. You need a system, and you need to know how to execute it, built for the real reasons why you're struggling. I've lived this. I know the fear of watching the scale creep up, the shame after eating when you're not hungry, but you eat anyway, and the fire it takes to say enough is enough. I'm not going back to the 300-pound version of myself, whatever old version of yourself that I was before surgery. Everything I learned, everything that saved me from that shame spiral, I'm regaining all of the weight back or more. Everything that gave me true food freedom, I teach in my coaching program, and I'm going to teach them of that in my workshop. This is not just my career. This is my personal mission, because I know what it's like to feel and think that you're broken when you're just missing the right tools, systems, and knowledge. You don't have to figure this out alone like I did. You don't have to spend months, years researching, because you've probably already done a lot of that. I've already done all the work, and I've tested this with hundreds of people. So I'm going to be sharing everything in my free workshop coming up on January 14th, how to eliminate food waste after bariatric surgery without injections, shots, or extreme dieting. I'm going to teach you the exact system that took me from that 30-day reading spiral to complete food freedom. The same system that's helped over 150 bariatric patients stop living in fear of their own brain. And this workshop's happening Wednesday, January 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern, live on Zoom. The link to register is in the description below, or the link in my bio. And this is a live training because I want to answer your specific question. My life's mission is to save people from my mistakes. I want to teach you everything that I wish I had known before my regain happened so that I didn't regain the weight. Let me be that person for you.